and the green flag comes out. Norton in the number 69 has an early advantage. Then you've got the number 2 of Austin Tunny, the youngest of the Tunny brothers in competition here. Norton got sideways in turn number 1, and Norton bumped over one of the Carmen markers over the northwest corner of the racetrack. And then you've got the number 5 of Ben Tunny, who won a World Figure 8 Championship a couple of years ago. And then the number 35 of Mark Harmon that moves through the corner and tries to maintain the pace. And Ben Tunny drifts a little to the outside, maybe trying to save that car for the endurance race that we follow later on this evening. And Austin Tunny, a college student in Northwest Ohio, who commutes back to the Indianapolis Speedrome on weekends during the racing season, has the advantage. And then you've got the number 69 of Norton, the number 35 of Harmon, and they'll come out of turn number 4 on this white flag lap. And the green flag has been displayed along with the Circle City pyrotechnics fireworks that light up the evening skies. Mark Harmon versus Ben Tunny on the start of this 90-minute event. Tunny has the initial advantage. Then you've got Harmon in the second spot. Behind them, you've got another Tunny running in third place. That is Austin Tunny, who's running to the outside of the number 69 of R.J. Norton Jr., and the field already is putting Dave Laster of lap on the number 13. Still, Ben Tunny and Mark Tunny have to watch out for the number 16 car coming through the intersection. So Ben Tunny has the advantage. Then you've got Mark Tunny, who's now running side by side with his cousin in the number 57 of Jesse Tunny, and they're trying to catch up to Austin Tunny, as they also have to watch out for Sean Cullen and Bulldog Whitaker at the intersection. The Laster car is running slowly in the inside. Now we also see the number 0 of Chad Sizemore that's fallen off the pace and will be right in front of the leaders as they clear turn number 4 of lap number 4 of this race, and we're now about 2.5 minutes through the event. The number 5 of Ben Tunny has the advantage. The number 35 of Mark Harmer is running in the second spot. Then you've got R.J. Norton in the number 69 and the number 2 of Austin Tunny. And notice that these drivers now enveloping the number 2 of Green at the intersection, coming gradually through the crossover, and almost getting caught up in the mess is the number 44 of Chris Harmer. You notice that there are a couple of drivers we've been talking about this weekend that are not in the starting field. Apparently there were motor problems for Jeremy Vanderhoof's number 6. And as we watch a pack of cars going through the intersection, another driver we thought was going to be a strong performer in this event would have been Curtis McMurtry. McMurtry's car was damaged at the intersection. The number 16 of David Lee Bird almost getting into the number 29 car, we should say, coming through the intersection. That's Bobby Corden. And now a spin by the number 16 of Bird. And Bird, trying to get restarted, has lost a lot of ground to the leaders. Now Ben Tunny, just like he did last night, has dropped back in the number 5. Ben Tunny had been running in the lead and now is back at about 5th place. Here's Mark Harmon finding a tiny gap at the intersection and holding on to the lead, being followed closely by the number 69 of Norton. And then you've got the number 2 of Austin Tunny through a crowded intersection. Austin Tunny, for the moment, by our reckoning, is running in about 3rd place. 4th place is Mark Tunny. 5th place is Ben Tunny. At the crossover, it's crowded again. And it's going to be like that for the most of this 90-minute event. We also noticed that we are watching as the number 13 of Dane Laston has stopped that last race. Well, the crossover crash between the car of Corbin and the number 12 of Riddle. They get together and collide at the intersection. And let's watch and find out how this works as we try to get these cars to roll through. We usually give cars involved in an incident like this a chance to get out of each other's way. We also notice that the number 5 of Ben Tunny has come to a stop on the west side of the racetrack. Ben Tunny, who'd been running back at about 5th place, has now stopped, and we're not certain exactly what the problem with Ben's car. Ben's car was damaged last night in a collision with the number 9 who was there last night but Ben Tunny has stopped, and we're trying to find out if he's going to have a chance to get restarted. Leader is Harmon in the number 35. Watching as Harmon comes through the intersection and the yellow is out. Now the yellow for these races is a slow down and follow the pace vehicle yellow in general. And the pace vehicle is waiting to have a chance to pick up the leader. And the leader again is the number 35 of Harmon. Then you've got the number 69 of Norton Jr. and the number 2 of Austin Tunny. Green will come out at the field at the north end of the racetrack. Looks like Riddle is going to be coming back onto the racetrack here in a couple of moments. So Riddle will have a chance to rejoin no, it's not Riddle's, that's the 0 of Chad Sizemore. Leader is Mark Harmon. The number 29, number 69, I should say, of Norton is running in 2nd place. Then you've got Tunny's running side by side for position number 3. You've got the number 2 of Austin Tunny and the number 17 of Mark Tunny. And now here's the number 66 and the number 0 of Chad Sizemore running side by side. Mark Harmon is able to pull away from Norton and also is able to pull away from Mark Tunny. The number 2 of Austin Tunny at the south end of the racetrack is running in position number 4 now, as the leaders had to watch out for Burge number 16. So Austin Tunny goes through the north end of the racetrack in 4th place. 5th place, coming off the racetrack now, is the number 66 of Whitaker. Harmon is having some luck in the early section of this race as he's managed to be able to get through the intersection fairly clean and maintain a fast pace. So it's Harmon, Norton, Mark Tunny, Austin Tunny. Then you've got the number 9 of R.J. Norton III running just ahead of Casey White, whose son won that junior fast kart race. And then the number 71 of Steve Frost Sr. running behind the number 41 of White. Then the number 38 of Doug Gregg, who won, now coming off turn number 4, almost had some contact between the number 44 of Chris Harmon and the number 20 of Shackelford. Now Chris Harmon gets bumped by the number 76 of Dietz going through turn number 2. Chris Harmon, for the time being, is about 3/4 of a lap behind Mark Harmon, and Mark Harmon has led most of the way in this event. Mark Harmon looked equally strong during last night's 100-lap event. So Mark Harmon maintaining the lead, and notice that coming out of the turn, it almost looked like he was starting to measure the amount of traffic at the crossover. Now it's getting close for the lead again. Mark Harmon now has 2 lengths over Norton, who almost got hit at the crossover by the number 16 of Loving. Mark Harmon ahead of Norton. Then you've got Mark Tunny, Austin Tunny, and then R.J. Norton, the 3rd, and the number 9. We'll have to double check with our scores and find out if Norton is running for position. I believe he is, and he's running for position just ahead of the number 41 of White. And there's the number 16 of Robbie Loving making an extra loop over the northeast corner of the racetrack, the 3rd turn of the figure 8 course. At the crossover, close between Norton and the number 18 of Rogers. Over the last couple of circuits, the number 35 of Mark Harmon has started to pull away from the number 69 of Norton as they race for the lead. At the crossover, Chris Harmon almost gets hit by the number 17 of Mark Tunny. Mark Tunny running in the third spot. No doubt that the fourth place is held by Austin Tunny in the number 2. Mark Harmon holding on about a 2-length advantage. At the crossover, Austin Tunny almost got into the Shackelford car. Now, Shackelford's number 28 is painted similar to Green's number 22. The difference is that Green's car has a little more yellow on it, and Shackelford's car has a little more white and black. Mark Harmon still running about 2 lengths ahead of Norton. And at the crossover, we see that R.J. Norton, the third in the red, number 9, has lost. Oh, at the crossover, the number 16 of Bird almost got into it with the number 17 of Mark Tunny. So let's watch as Green comes through the intersection and Shackelford comes through the intersection. And then you've got Chris Harmon through the crossover ahead of pack of drivers. And we also notice behind those drivers running side by side, the number 38 of Doug Gregg is running wheel-to-wheel with Ricky Dietz at number 76. Dietz said after last night's race that running in that 100-lapper last night gave him a lot of confidence. We notice that there are 2 drivers that have not come back onto the racetrack after making pit stops. One of them was at the intersection as we see the number 35 of Mark Harmon still has the lead, but now the move is being put on by the number 17 of Mark Tunny, who just got up to the second spot and moved around the number 69 of Norton. Again, a couple of the drivers that made early pit stops, one of them has not returned. The other one was the number 5 of Ben Tunny, whose car stalled on the racetrack coming out of the second turn. Also, we have not seen a return of Riddle in the number 12. But it's pretty clear now that we have a brand new battle for the lead that could be happening as Mark Harmon through the intersection running ahead of Mark Tunny. And those drivers are getting close to a whole bunch of one over in turn number 1 and 3. We've got one of the Harmons in trouble. That is Chris Harmon, who's come into a collision with the number 11 of Sean Cullen. Sean Cullen and Chris Harmon are trying to get out of each other's way. You notice the green flag is staying right out for the moment. And if there is a potentially serious problem on the racetrack, it could go down to red. But if there's a car that's stuck or in a bad position, it may stay there for a while. That's just the way that the rules of this particular race go. And you saw a spin by the number 35 of Mark Harmon, who is running in close quarters for other cars. And there is Mark Harmon getting restarted. And now Mark Tunny has first place. So the Harmon family has a double frustrated as the Mark Harmon car loses the lead, and Chris Harmon in a collision with the number 11 of Sean Cullen. A yellow comes out as we see David D. Lee Bird making a stop, and finally the Chris Harmon car backs away under this yellow. And again, this yellow, the way the yellow is handled in this particular event, it is a slow down and follow the leader, or follow the pace vehicle, and you see the number 8. That is the way we numbered our pace vehicle here, which is a pace truck. And so we're waiting to see when the pace vehicle is caught by the leader, and the new leader is the number 17 of Mark Tunny. In third place will now be the number 69 of R.J. Norton, the junior, and that's the way they'll be running for a while as we get set for the restart here. And you've got the number 17 of Mark Tunny, by our reckoning, up in first, and also working up on that top 2 or 3, the number 69 of R.J. Norton, the junior as we come back to green, and the number 2 of Austin Tunny is running up front. And notice that this is probably the best run that Austin Tunny has ever had in one of these extra length events. But now trying to force his way up through the race, you've got the number 76 of Dietz, the Washington State champion. And Dietz almost bumped the back end of Austin Tunny's number 2 coming off turn number 2. One driver we're watching to see if that competitor is able to make up all the ground that he lost in the spin going into turn number 1, and that is the Mark Harmon, number 35. The other Harmon, the Chris Harmon, number 44, that got into a spin roughly at the same part of the racetrack, is actually running about a quarter lap ahead of Mark, but Mark may be running faster. We should note that Chris Harmon, the number 44, had the original engine in that car failed during yesterday's first practice session, as we see Mark Tunny find a gap past Corbin in the number 17. Corbin's in the, I should say, in the number 29, and Corbin comes slashing through the intersection along with the number 11 of Sean Cullen. Mark Tunny now pulling away from Norton Jr. by about another 2 lengths as the leaders are right now working after 51 laps are completed, as we see the 0 of Sizemore coming back out on the racetrack. Sizemore's made about 3 or 4 pit stops, and now there's almost a collision between the Dietz number 76 and the number 2 of Austin Tunny, as we saw Austin Tunny all but spinning the car coming off turn number 4. Now the leaders are running through heavy traffic coming off turn number 4 about 10 minutes into this race. Mark Tunny has the advantage and goes down to the inside of Cullen. And we also notice there may be some problems with the number 18 of Eddie Rogers, who sounded confident. And at the crossover, Corbin almost got into the number 0 of Chad Sizemore. Still Mark Tunny and Norton. And again, we've got 2 Norderts out there. Norton Jr. in the number 69, and Norton Jr. is the father of Norton III, who's in the red number 9. And the red number 9 had almost gotten to the Corbin number 29. Now Corbin is directly ahead, directly behind, I should say, of the 69 of R.J. Norton Jr. But notice that Norton has gotten around Mark Tunny. Mark Tunny in the intersection has to watch out for Doug Gregg and Robbie Loving coming through the crossover. Mark Tunny, the intersection, almost hit Doug Gregg broadside. And he'll face a similar challenge coming off turn number 4. At the intersection, has to watch out for Chris Harmon, as Norton had to watch out for Loving and his son. So R.J. Norton Jr., the number 69, has to watch out for his son in the red number 9, lap and lap after again. We also noticed that the number 57 of Jesse Tunny is starting to move up through the pack. Jesse Tunny has gotten around the number 41 of White. At the crossover, Norman almost gets into Mark Tunny. Rather into Mark Harmon, I should say. At the crossover, the green and Dietz cars almost collided. Mark Tunny now is about 6 or 8 lengths over Norton Jr. And Dietz appears to be moving forward into the number 76. But notice that the next driver that is starting to move forward is the number 57 of Jesse Tunny. And as you mentioned, Jesse Tunny was one of those guys who was trying a strategy of not necessarily trying to lead every lap and taking it easy in the early part of this race, as we're 1 hour and 5 minutes and 47 seconds into this 90-minute U.S. Figure 8 Championship. Spark coming out of the Corbin car. Corbin has a flat tire, would appear, on the left rear. Corbin bringing up a whole bunch of sparks. He's going to try to get through the intersection and will back off and now try to crawl through the crossover. Corbin in the white and blue number 28, apparently a flat tire on the left rear. Now, we mentioned a couple of the drivers that we thought were going to take it easy and start to move up in the second part of the pack. And one of them, of course, is Doug Gregg in the number 38. But Gregg now is starting to form kind of a racing trio with the two Harmons. You've got Mark Harmon about 6 lengths behind Gregg. Then you've got Chris Harmon about 6 lengths behind Mark. And both of those drivers are about a half lap behind the current leader, who is Mark Tunny, who's coming out of turn number 4 of what is the 67th lap of this race. And again, this is a timed race, and we're about 22 minutes through that 90 minutes. Dietz bounced off the marker coming out of turn number 4 and almost ran into the number 11 of Sean Cullen. And now there's the number 57 of Jesse Tunny going around the number 9 of Norton III. I would not be surprised if that was a pass for position. There were 3 Tunny brothers that started this race. And we are glancing around the racetrack to make sure that we are definitely minus Austin. Looks like Austin came off the racetrack a while ago. Jesse's still out there. And then you have the number 5 of Ben Tunny that's broke apparently and dropped out early in the contest. Look at this. The number 35 of Mark Harmon is now starting to sail forward and moving around the number 9 of Norton III. And we also notice that Corbin is coming back onto the racetrack. That's the number 22 of Green, who has stopped at the intersection. He has cars coming at him at all directions. He almost got hit by his teammate of Shackelford. And now finally getting underway again is Green's number 22. Green, and now a piece has come off of one of those cars. It looks like a piece of fiberglass. In any case, it's being ground into the racetrack by the cars as they come flying through the intersection. At the intersection, Casey White almost got hit by Norton III. I almost wonder if Austin Tunny decided to make a pit stop to go back and try and fix Ben's car, or well, we won't even guess about that. If that was the case, what we now see one of the Tunny cars. Now here comes Austin Tunny coming back onto the racetrack. He did make an extended pit stop, but apparently the stop was not for Ben. It was for Austin's car, and Austin had come off the racetrack about 2 or 3 minutes ago, and now he comes back onto the racetrack and has lost a lot of ground. Mark Tunny, in the meantime, is gone underneath Cullen's car and is passing Corbin and the number 2044 of Chris Harmon. Mark Tunny coming off turn number 4 has to watch out for Casey White at the intersection. The number 69 of Norton Jr. is now gradually being caught by the number 57 of Jesse Tunny. That is going to eventually be a race for second place. And we also noticed that the number 35 of Mark Harmon, after his early frustration, is starting to catch up to the leaders as well. At the intersection, Doug Gregg almost gets hit by Dietz. Mark Tunny through the intersection, and again we are gradually watching this race for position develop between Norton Jr. and Jesse Tunny coming out of the second turn. They have to watch out for Mark Harmon and Gregg going through the crossover. So Norton Jr. in the blue number 69 is gradually being caught by Jesse Tunny's number 57. And they are side by side for position. Jesse Tunny going for the second spot into turn number 3 with about a half hour left to go in this contest. Jesse Tunny has moved up from the back of the pack and has come to the second spot. And we saw Corbin bump over the marker over in turn number 2 and almost fly into the... And now Mark Harmon is making another pit stop. Mark Harmon is making another pit stop. Mark Harmon is making another pit stop in the number 35. Mark Harmon is making another pit stop in the 35. Perhaps whatever it was that either manifested itself or caused that spin or came from that spin he had early has started to get even worse. So you got two branches of the Tunny family. They're working first and second. Mark Tunny has dominated much of this race and is about a quarter of 3/4 of a lap behind, or rather ahead of Jesse Tunny. But another driver that may deserve to be watched and is starting to try to move up through the field is the number 76 of Dietz. And I will probably guess that this next race that's showing up could be eventually a battle for position. We see as the Harmon car is coming back on the racetrack. Mark Harmon is coming back onto the racetrack, taking a big risk at the intersection. We'll double check and see if the contest that we just saw settled coming out of the second turn between the number 41 of Casey White. I believe that was for positional. We'll have to double check with our scorers. And one of the ironies about the timing of that pit stop is that Mark Harmon, the number 35, who earlier led the race, is running just ahead of the current leader of the race, the number 17 of Mark Tunny. So now Mark Tunny knows how fast he's going to have to go because Mark Harmon was one of the fastest drivers in the early stage of this race. Mark Harmon and Tunny come through the intersection just ahead of Austin Tunny's number 2. And notice also that Mark Tunny is starting, as we see Mark Harmon making a miraculous move between Corbin and Shackelford. Again, the next circumstance we're watching is that Doug Gregg in the number 38 would, by all indications, appear to be running at the tail end of the lead lap, or pretty much the case. And Doug Gregg was a person that we thought was going to have a chance to start to work hard and the second section of this race. Instead, it looks like that's not going to happen. And now the Shackelford car is making a pit stop. Shackelford is making a pit stop. Shackelford is making a pit stop. Shackelford is making a pit stop. Also have a pit stop for the number 9 of R.J. Norton III. R.J. Norton III is making a pit stop as well. And Austin Tunny is slowing down. It looks like he might have a flat tire on the left front, although we'll have to find out here as he goes around the corner. Austin Tunny was slow. Yeah, definitely does look like Austin may have some sort of problem with that left front suspension, and he's trying to make a hard left and get into the pit entrance. And Austin Tunny, no, he will not make that hard left and keep on going. For a moment there, we thought we had a flat tire. I guess we were incorrect. So the number 17 of Mark Tunny still has the advantage and is about ready to put the number 38 of Doug Gregg one lap down. You heard a squeal as the number 18 of Roger went sideways into turn number 1. Yep, Doug Gregg has gone a lap down. Doug Gregg is making a pit stop. 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 You wonder if Gregg is going to do something that only a handful of drivers have tried in an event like this, whether he's going to try to put on fresh tires and come back and see if that will speed him up. So Mark Tunny right behind Chris Harmon, and Tunny is still trying to catch up to Casey White. So we have completed 53 minutes and 42 seconds in this event. Again, this is a timed event, we should say. So the driver that we've been watching over the last few minutes, the drivers we've been watching closely in the last few minutes have been the number 35 of Mark Harmon. But next thing we're going to do is to watch and see if Doug Gregg comes quickly back onto the racetrack. Looking over toward the area where Doug Gregg would be coming back onto the racetrack after making a pit stop, you wonder if Gregg is making a tire stop or if something broke on the car. Because the time that Gregg made the stop, he was already had fallen off the lead lap. So Mark Tunny continues to run up front. Austin Tunny, who looked like he was having some sort of tire problems, has made a pit stop and has not returned. We glance over to see if Gregg is going to be coming back onto the racetrack. Has not done so yet. And of course we saw Austin's brother, big brother, Ben, drop out. Here is a car that's coming back onto the racetrack after making a pit stop. That'll be the number 18 of Eddie Rogers. And Rogers is pitting pretty much right next to Doug Gregg. But Gregg has not returned. Robbie Loving coming through the intersection just ahead of the number 9 of R.J. Norton, the third. And for a moment we pause to see where the leader is. He's coming off turn number 4. That's Mark Tunny, the number 17. And we're trying to get an idea of what the gap is between Mark and Jesse, and it's about a quarter lap. And now Jesse Tunny goes around the number 69 of Norton. Our scores are now showing Ricky Dietz in the third spot in the number 76. Dietz is persevering, and Dietz, after the 100-lapper last night, sounded extremely positive and extremely optimistic about this event. And Dietz thought that as he learned more about this track, he got faster. And there's R.J. Norton Jr. coming off the racetrack. R.J. Norton Jr. is pitting and out of probably a spot in the first three, or the first five, I should say. And out of turn number 4, Mark Tunny almost ran into the back end of R.J. Norton, the third in the red car. Here's Dietz coming through turn number 3 and 4. Now, in glancing at our scoreboard is calling Dietz in the number 76 your runner-up driver. And our scoreboard is also showing the number 57 of Jesse Tunny in position number 3. So using what we see on the scoreboard, that means that we'd be getting close. Oh, the intersection, the leader almost got into Green's number 22. And glancing at our scoreboard, that would put mean we're developing a race for second place. Again, Mark Tunny almost runs into the back end of the number 9 of Norton III. We saw one car that went slashing through the pit area, apparently after making a stop. We'll have to double check and see which car that is. It's the number 69 of Norton that comes back out after making a stop. So again, our scoreboard shows with about just over half of this race still to be run, I believe. We're watching Dietz in the number 76 and Jesse Tunny running behind Chris Harmon's number 44. Chris Harmon lost a lot of laps in the first half of this race. One X factor in this U.S. Figure 8 Championship is that the drivers are running on a different type of Hoosier tire than they were running on for the 100 lapper. It's a wider and larger tire, what the racers love to call a big tire. But everybody is running on these same tires, so it's either an advantage or a disadvantage for everybody. I noticed over the next couple of laps that the number 76 of Dietz has started to pull away from Jesse Tunny. We thought that Jesse Tunny was starting to catch up to Dietz. Instead, it's the other way around. About 3/4 of an hour left to run in this timed race. And there's a pit stop for Casey White. Casey White is coming into the racetrack and coming into the pit area. Casey White is one of several drivers who are making a pit stop. By the way, earlier we had speculated that maybe Doug Gregg was making a pit stop to change tire to try to pick up speed, but it's pretty obvious since Gregg's car has not returned that there was a mechanical failure that dropped him out. Also noting that this has got to be quite a physical challenge for Mark Tunny. Mark Tunny has not driven a race car that much this season, and certainly not under the demanding circumstances of this U.S. Figure 8 Championship. And Mark Tunny has, in the past, missed major races such as this at the Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems Indianapolis Speedrome because of a bad back. So this has got to be an endurance test beyond that of some other drivers for Mark Tunny in the number 17. And as we glance at our scoreboards, the scoreboard indicates it's about a quarter lap between Mark Tunny in the number 17 and the driver that is shown as the second place driver of Ricky Dietz. We also glanced to find out. We see the number 41 of Casey White has come back after making the pit stop. Another driver we've been watching from moment to moment to find out how well he is running after that car got involved in some trouble earlier. That's the Mark Harmon car. And Mark Harmon is again trying to catch up to just about everybody in front of him. Mark Harmon's probably in a circumstance where he knows the best thing he can do is to run as hard as possible after leading many of the early laps in this event. It's about 5 months to go, but you've got to figure that Mark Harmon figures that this racetrack owes him a lot after he ran strong in the last couple of World Figure 8 Championships and ran well in the 100-lapper last night without scoring a victory in either of those events. We also notice that Corbin has parked his car in the south area of the Figure 8 infield. Mark Tunny now trying to go around Chris Harmon coming off turn number 4. Mark Tunny finishing his 134th lap. About 40 minutes left to go in this contest. As you watch Mark Tunny coming off turn number 4. Again, staying clear of Dietz and of the number 57 of Jesse Tunny. Jesse, as we have mentioned before, is the only of the 3 Tunny brothers who is still running. Mark Tunny is a son of Bruce Tunny, who was scheduled to run in this race and decided to sit this one out. Rather, Bruce Tunny did run earlier but dropped out early. The car that is running in the lead bears the name of Orville Valter's automotive business in New Palestine. Orville Valter died just a couple of days ago and was honored at the Indianapolis Speedrome last night. A spin by Mark Harmon, flat tire on the right rear. Mark Harmon has spun coming off turn number 35, flat right rear tire. Mark Harmon gradually gets restarted. Mark Harmon has a flat right rear tire that led to a spin coming out of turn number 4, so he'll make a stop to change that. And that spin could lose Mark Harmon so much time that he no longer has any sort of chance of winning this timed race. You'll notice that the number 29 of Bobby Corbin has been left in the south section of the infield. That's pretty much standard procedure for an extended length figure 8 race here at the Briny Heating and Cooling Indianapolis Speedrome. If a car is not severely disabled and is not in a exceptionally vulnerable location, it'll be left pretty much where it stops, which was basically the same thing that happened to Ben Tunny. I think this is going to be the Harmon car coming back onto the racetrack after a fast stop of that right rear tire. Harmon is now back onto the racetrack. Harmon is going to have that fresh tire on the right rear, and you wonder if the if the guys in the pit area are going to be watching to see what Harmon does with that fresh rubber, even if it's only on one corner, to see if that's going to make a difference. We also notice that Norton Jr. has come back onto the racetrack at the number 69. It's been several minutes ago. Almost some bumping between Mark Tunny and the number 18 of Rogers coming off turn number 2 of the 147th lap. .40 and 49 seconds elapsed in this event. Mark Tunny, the number 17, maybe for a few laps is going to have to watch out for Ricky Dietz coming through the intersections. That time Dietz had to watch out for Norton III. But Dietz is running really hard. He's flown away from Robbie Loving and Chris Harmon, and now is moving past the number 11 of Sean Cullen. While there's no formal timing of these cars, no transponder timing, it looks like Dietz is as fast as anybody else. You might wonder why no transponder timing of this event. It's because the people that handle electronic timing systems have looked at the challenge of handling things here at the Bryant Heating, Cooling, and Systems Indianapolis Speedrome and have pretty much thrown up their hands. It's just that difficult. Transponder timing works best on longer tracks with longer laps, and also which do not have the many different circumstances. You can actually come across the finish line of the figure 8 courses here at the Indianapolis Speedrome without having actually officially finished a lap. And there are so many things that can happen to the crossover. You can actually circle around several times not having finished a lap. So it's really extremely difficult. Nobody that handles that sort of computer-controlled timing has been able to figure it out. Even at a extremely high speed super speedway, it's a lot easier to have transponder scoring there at a little 1/5 mile here at the Indianapolis Speedrome. It's just that hard. Nobody has ever figured out to write a computer program to make figure 8 racing electronically scoreable. We also notice some body panels are starting to come off of the Chris Harmon number 44 coming out of turn number 2. Mark Tunny now is getting close to a position where he might end up putting Jesse Tunny a lap down, coming off turn number 4 of lap 156. Over in turn number 1, there was almost banging of wheels between Casey White and Dietz. White in the blue number 41, Dietz in the black number 76. And certainly the circumstance we're seeing on the racetrack right now should establish that Dietz has definitely been running faster than Jesse Tunny. But again, with Jesse Tunny for a while, it looked like he was the fastest guy on the racetrack, but has not been able to maintain that pace. And now Mark Tunny is catching up to him with the number 17. Watching Dietz coming out of turn number 4, Dietz has been dueling with the number 41 of Casey White. And of course, when you're running near the end of a race like this, you have to be careful that you don't end up almost banging wheel for the driver for which you are not running for position. Although it may be that Casey White is convinced that he is running with Dietz for position. Notice that both of these drivers are not that far behind. An interesting trio, the Norton III, number 9, and Norton Jr. and Mark Harmon in the number 35. And those drivers got to the intersection just before Christopher Green ran into them. So again, Jesse Tunny running directly ahead of Mark Tunny in the number 17. And there is Jesse Tunny going one lap down to Mark coming through turn number 3 of lap number 164. Jesse, it looked like, didn't put up a huge fight under that circumstance, which may mean that he is one of those people that believes that as long as he's within a lap or so for the lead, that there's no reason to push things too hard. And that is a belief that a lot of people who are steady drivers in these extra length endurance figure 8 races figure that if you stay somewhere close to the fight, you're in good shape. And one person that emphasized that point that he was speaking to earlier was a world champion, Rance Harmon, who said that when he won the world championship here about a quarter century ago, he was about 6 or 7 laps down, and all the other guys he was racing in that 3-hour timed race took themselves out, and he was in the right place. That in the era of Wayne Arnold and Mike St. John and Kenny St. John as the dominant drivers at this track at what was then called the Pro Stock division. About 20 minutes left to go in this contest. Mark Tunny still trying to run away for this event. Nobody immediately that close to him to race for position, but Ricky Dietz looking extremely strong in the number 76 at the north end of the racetrack, closing up on Mark and Chris Harmon and the number 16, Robbie Loving. Almost too close to Loving. These cars use various types of body panels. Some of them sheet metal, some of them, a handful of them, use some sort of fiberglass. And of course, if you end up running into them too hard and running into one of the exposed, sometimes sharp edges of the big bumpers they use, you have a chance of cutting down a tire again. That's the sort of thing that can take you a long distance back. Even a fast pit stop here at the Indianapolis Speedrome is about a minute. 33 minutes and 20 seconds has lapsed in this U.S. Figure 8 Championship. Mark Tunny running just ahead of the number 18 of Rogers, and they have to watch out for the number 0 of Chad Sizemore. Sizemore's made multiple pit stops. Let's see if Sizemore's coming back to the pits. No, he's going into turn number 1. At the crossover, you saw the close encounter between Dietz and Norton III. And there's the green car getting close to Norton Jr. And once again, we see the Chris Harmon car having some of the body panels starting to fall off, but that's no harm for that particular card. As they work past the halfway mark of this race as measured in time. Dietze coming through the intersection, almost getting into Mark Tunny in the number 17. Dietz through the intersection, almost gets into Rogers, and notice that on Dietz's tail is the number 35 of Mark Harmon. This is going to be an interesting match and measure of sheer speed between these drivers on the figure 8 course. And as we mentioned, Mark Harmon, after he had the flat tire on the left rear, and we are curious to find out if that tire change would make the car faster. Well, certainly is catching up to Dietz. But again, we're starting to see this gradually evolve into a strategic race as we're past the 2/3 mark, and we've got about a half hour left to go, timed for this race. 184 laps, of course. As we see the number 18 of Rogers bumping over a marker. There are so many subtle pressures that are coming up in the close of this event. First off, the pressure that Mark Tunny faces, just the physical pressure. We mentioned he has had back problems before, and this is clearly the longest distance that he has driven this season in any type of race car. Now, it's a familiar race car because Mark has driven this car at the Indianapolis Speedrome many, many times. So even though it's got to be familiar, like an old trouble off turn number 4, almost taking out Mark Tunny, was right behind the spin by the number 11 and the number 0 of Chad Sizemore. That car was damaged, and Sizemore comes in and makes a pit stop. And again, there was a collision between the number 11 of Sean Cullen and the 0 of Sizemore, and that happened right in front of the leading number 17 of Mark Tunny. We're about ready to play analysis for the number 17 of Mark Tunny about the pressures that he faced, and that was one of the potential problems that we were going to mention, that Mark Tunny had to be careful of the crossover, but he could only show so much care in the crossover of any sort of figure 8 race because you have to take chances. But something like that can knock you down figuratively and literally in an instant. We've seen that happen time and time again at this racetrack over the last 3 decades, that something that you do not cause can take you out. But again, when you talk to people in racing, they will tell you that you can't necessarily take it easy in any sort of race. And there you saw Mark Tunny almost run into Robbie Loving going into turn number 3. And now you see another spin by Cullen, again right ahead of the leader over in turn number 1. Cullen looks like he might have stalled his car, and Cullen almost got hit by Rogers, the number 18. Rogers made a snap decision to try to go to the inside of Cullen, and that was the wrong decision. We see that the 0 of Chad Sizemore is coming back onto the racetrack. So here's Sean Cullen, who appears to have stalled his car, and the yellow is coming out. And as we watch to see who is still on the racetrack, was that Mark Tunny just went off and made a stop? Yeah, the number 17 of Mark Tunny has made a pit stop. So Mark Tunny has made a pit stop the first time that Mark Tunny has stopped. You wonder if that's going to be for fuel or for tires, and if that's the case, then that is going to elevate the number 76 of Dietz up to first place, and that also, as we glance on the racetrack, let's see if that is going to put the number 57 of Jesse Tunny back on the lead lap. It looks as if Jesse Tunny has also made a pit stop. Green will come back out. Dietz has got the lead. But looks as if Dietz has now made a stop as well. Yeah, Dietz is coming back onto the racetrack after making a stop. And Dietz may have run into some problems. At least he's trying to figure out how to restart. Dietz is going to make a second stop. Dietz is going to make a second stop. Something may have gone wrong with Dietz's car. He had the lead when the yellow came out. Now Dietz is going in to make a stop. So Dietz has now found himself with a chance to win his biggest race of his career and now has come back to make a second stop. And I believe, according to our scoreboard, that will elevate Mark Tunny back up to first place. There's the green number 22 coming back onto the racetrack. So Dietz, if he has a chance to get back onto the racetrack fast, will have a chance to run someplace in the top three. According to our scoreboard, it's the number 17 of Mark Tunny in the lead. And if those numbers are correct, then that would hint that the number 57 of Jesse Tunny is at the tail end of the lead lap. And notice that Mark Tunny almost banged wheels going into turn number 1 between the number 35 of Mark Harmon. Dietz has not returned to the racetrack yet. And again, we have not seen Dietz return to the racetrack in the same way that we saw Bruce Tunny making a stop and not return from that, and Ben Tunny make a stop and not return from that, and Doug Gregg make a pit stop and not return from that. Trouble as the number 44 of Chris Harmon ran over one of the wheels of the number 41 of Casey White, got launched hard into the air. Chris Harmon's car lucky to come back on all four wheels back onto the pavement. Chris Harmon colliding wheel to wheel with Casey White's number 41 and going flying through the air. And you see the green for the time being again. Chris Harmon's car came down on all fours and is out of the way of a median circumstance to having trouble getting in everybody else's in the way. And the yellow is now being displayed so you can get the Chris Harmon number 41. That's the second incident for Harmon in this event. He spun and stalled for several minutes over in turn number 1 in the early stages of this race. These are not technically open-wheeled racers, but with the big tires, they have a lot of that rubber that extends outside of the fenders. And you can see Casey White took his time driving around Chris Harmon to make sure the driver was okay. And as we go, getting set for the restart at the north end of the racetrack, Mark Tunny still holding on to the lead. You've got a couple of other drivers that could be factors in this race that are caught in a race in traffic, and two of those drivers that could be factors are the number 76 of Dietz and the number 56 of Jesse Tunny. And then you've got the number 35 of Mark Harmon, who is still running in one of the quicker cars on the racetrack, but none of them have had any sort of challenge for the number 17 of Mark Tunny as far as the sheer combination of speed and racing. Is Chris Harmon coming back on the racetrack after getting tossed in the air? I don't believe it. Chris Harmon came in and made a brief pit stop to fix that car. Chris Harmon's car 5 minutes ago was going airborne over in the second turn. He's coming back onto the racetrack. He's going to go back out there and race again at full speed. And there goes Mark Harmon back into the pit area. Again, a flat right to rear tire of Mark Harmon. And again, Mark needed a lot of good luck to have a chance to win this race. He is not entirely eliminated, but he is going to lose a lot of valuable time again. So the fates of the Marks have been some of the major stories in this event so far of Mark Tunny and Mark Harmon. Both drivers have probably, on combination, have been the fastest out. And now here's Mark Harmon coming back onto the racetrack. Lost about 2 or 3 laps as a result of that second change of the right rear tire of that car. Mark Tunny has had the combination of speed and endurance in that number 17 that has left him up in front. So as Mark Tunny runs underneath Chris Harmon, putting him yet another lap down. It looks like another car is going to be coming back onto the racetrack. And let's see if that's going to be yet another return to the action by the 0 of Chad Sizemore. And it will be. And Jesse Tunny running side by side with Mark Harmon coming out of the second turn. As you can see, the time remaining on the scoreboard on the north end of the racetrack. A glance at the drivers that are remaining in this event, who all would deserve a lot of credit just to be able to keep on going through their efforts and through the effort of their pit crews to repair those cars after some of the wild things that have happened to them. Robbie Loving is still out there to run the entire distance. Chris Harmon in the number 44, we noticed, has been spun and almost got flipped over in the southwest corner of the racetrack. The number 69 of Norton Jr. and his son, Norton III. Dietz, the number 76. The number 35 of Mark Harmon, who's had to change several tires on that car after flats. The number 41 of Casey White. The number 18 of Eddie Rogers. All those drivers managing to keep on pushing on. And also the number 22 of Chris Green. And Chris Green almost got hit and spun out over in turn number 3 on what was the 230th lap of this event. So the inference is that this would be something like 400 laps, 420 laps in the equivalent of a World Figure 8 Championship. And once again, Chris Harmon and Casey White going side by side in the same place where they almost ended up with a big crash, and they almost bumped into each other again coming through that second turn. Starting to run short of the laps and the time in this U.S. Figure 8 Championship, as the number 17, Mark Tunny is now getting close to the 0 of Chad Sizemore. And almost some jostling between Jesse Tunny, the number 57, and Jesse Tunny almost got into the wall with the race he had there, 3 abreast by the number 22 of Green and the 9 of Norton III. And Norton III is now racing side by side with his father, Norton Jr. At the intersection, you have to watch out for Dietz. And Norton III almost got into the number 18 of Rogers. And the clock again shows you the time that's left in this event. As Norton III almost gets into the number 41 of White. And there's Jesse Tunny flying through the intersection just ahead of Rogers in the number 18. Much of the measure of a motorsport event is the amount of action that you have, and certainly there's been nobody can feel shortchanged with the amount of action we've had in this endurance race and the number of stories. And so many of the stories in this event are perseverance and of disappointments. How Ben Tunny and Doug Gregg had good chances to win this race and found themselves being knocked out. About how Jeremy Vanderhoof wasn't able to start because of apparent engine problems during practice. About how the Harmons have kept on battling between crashes and flat tires and are still trying to notice now that you've got an interesting duo on the south end of the racetrack. You've got the blue number 69 of Norton Jr. and the number 35 of Harmon running nose to tail right ahead of the leading number 17 of Mark Tunny. What will Mark Tunny do? Mark Tunny will try to go down to the inside and pass Harmon going to the south end of the racetrack with only a few minutes left to go in this contest. The Harmons have been known as among the best figure 8 racers any place. And certainly they come here and constantly prove themselves, but they so often come up short. And Ricky Dietz, the number 76, has also proved himself as capable of running with the elites in the world of figure 8 racing. And certainly Dietz probably came here with less rest than anybody because Dietz, remember, personally drove his car here in the middle of the week 2,500 miles across the Continental Divide and the Plain States. And again, an interesting group running in traffic off the lead. Dietz in the number 76, just ahead of the number 57 of Jesse Tunny. Jesse's now shown as the second place driver, and the number 69 of Norton Jr. is shown on our scoreboard as the third place driver. As the time starts to run out rapidly in this 90-minute U.S. Figure 8 Championship. Jesse Tunny has made one pit stop. Other than that, he has not put a wheel wrong. has been the picture of consistent speed and whatever caution is possible in figure eight racing on a short track. And just as we said that, Mark Tunny almost ran into the number 76 and almost banged wheels with Dietz at the south end of the racetrack. And in the meantime, we watched Jesse Tunny do a little wheel-to-wheel racing with the number 41 of Casey White. And wouldn't you know it, just at that moment, the number 41 of Casey White coming out of turn number 2 got sideways in front of Mark Tunny. And Mark Tunny that time had a close encounter with R.J. Norton III as he goes to the outside of Norton in the exit of the third turn with about 6 minutes to go in this contest. So as we start to run out of time, Mark Tunny again faces the necessity of being perfect for another 5.5 minutes. Perfection means basically keeping the tires inflated and keeping all the wheels on the car. And there's the number 16 of Loving bouncing over the corner mark in the northwestern corner of this race that almost launched him into Tunny. And Mark Tunny that time had to watch out for Norton III coming out of turn number 4 through the intersection. And there's Mark Tunny closing up on Jesse Tunny going into turn number 1, almost trying to pass Jesse on the inside. And there goes Chris Green making yet another pit stop. Mark Tunny again right behind Jesse coming out of turn number 4. And Jesse trying to figure out what he's going to do with Chris Harmon in the number 44. I believe that scoreboard shows us we have 4 minutes and 3 seconds left to go in this 90-minute timed race. So as we start to rapidly run out of time in this event, there are 3 drivers you have to... Whoa, number 76 of Dietz almost ran into the rear end of the number 41 of White. There are 3 drivers you have to, of course, watch carefully. Of course, the top 3 on the scoreboard, the number 17. And the 17 ran into the number 57 of Jesse Tunny and almost pushed Jesse Tunny into Chris Harmon. So again, we've got 3 drivers to watch here in the closing stages of this event. The lead number 17 of Mark Tunny, who again runs wheel to wheel and almost runs into the number 44 of Chris Harmon. And then you've got the driver shown as the second place driver, the number 57 of Jesse Tunny, the number 69 of Norton Jr., and also the number 76 of Dietz. 2 minutes and 18 seconds left to go in this contest. And then you've got the number 22 of Green back onto the racetrack. One minute and 56 seconds left to go in the U.S. Figure 8 Championship. That close to declaring a champion, that close to victory or defeat. And notice that even though the clock is diminishing, you just see that Mark Tunny continues to run in close quarters with other drivers, including the number 41 of Casey White, the number 57 of Jesse Tunny. So Mark Tunny in the south end of the racetrack with a minute and 27 seconds to go in this 90-minute enduro. Mark Tunny, a couple of years ago, won the late model championship of the Indianapolis Speedrome, has won several extra length races at this racetrack, but this will be his longest race victory, as we see Chris Green almost bouncing off the 0 of Chad Sizemore. 1 minute to go in this event as we wait to see when the checkered flag is going to be displayed. And we see Green running into the back end of Mark Harmon. Again, the race ends on the display of the checkered flag and not necessarily when the clock runs out. 43 seconds left to go in this event as we work on the north end of the racetrack, seeing if Mark Tunny can keep the wheels on the cars. He almost runs into Mark Harmon underneath the flag stand with 31 seconds left to go in this event. "22 seconds left to go in this race. 19 seconds left to go. Going into the first turn once again, Mark Tunny goes above the number 9 of Norton III. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And watch for the display of the checkered flag to end the United States Figure 8 Championship. There it is, the checkered flag being given to Mark Tunny with a combination of speed and endurance that has rarely been seen in the 71-year history of this track. And is being welcomed and congratulated by his 3-time world champion father, Bruce.
Everyone, let's give a big round of applause to the first ever United States Figure 8 champion, Mark Tunny. Definitely looks tired there. 2 wins on the weekend for the father and son of the 3. Mark steps down here in the victory lane. Whew. You look pretty tired, Mark. That was one whale of a race right there. 275 laps.
I don't know how you guys expect me to talk after something like that. I don't know how Jesse run so hard at the end. I mean, I wanted to get him a lap down because I was afraid of a late caution after we pitted for tires, and it made the car real tight, and Jesse took 4, and he was rolling, and I knew that I felt bad for the 76, come all the way from Washington, took the lead, and something happened to him on that restart. He was having a great run. I got to say thanks to every driver out here that raced with me tonight. I mean, showed tremendous amount of respect. I haven't run all year and gave me the breaks where I needed them, and man, it meant a lot to me. And I got to thank my dad. I mean, he just let me get in the car. He put tires on it for me, and wow, it was just unbelievably fast. And Big Ed Bishop, you know, Doug, Jason, brother Dana, I mean, all my family. My Aunt Deb for the little go juice she gave for a water bottle to me before the race. But my wife, Krista, and I'm going to put this trophy in my daughter's room. Hope she likes to play with it.
Yeah, that's great. What a star-studded field, as you mentioned, from Ricky Dietz from Washington running great, some great guys from Michigan, from Kentucky, a great field tonight. So what's it mean to actually win this race over such a great field?
It just means you beat the best in the world, because the guys that race here week in and week out, even the guys from Jeffersonville, Michigan, everybody's fast. Everybody's so good. If you win here against all those guys, you've really accomplished something. And, you know, my hat's off to all those guys that, you know, worked their tail off to run this race. And, man, it was a wild one for a while. And, wow, these, you know, so fast. Just, I'm out of shape, man. It's horrible.
$5,000 payday, big payday right there. But the most important thing is there's world figure eight champions in your family, but now only one United States figure eight champion, first ever.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's something special. Like I said, this race, it means a lot to me, the trophy. You know, awesome crowd. I got to thank all you fans for cheering me around on that victory lap. That means a lot to me. It really does. I like to be well respected, and I like to hope I do the right things on and off the track and be a role model for any little kids and stuff. And when they clap for me after I win, it means a lot to me.
Well, I know you have a lot of good sponsors that helped you get here, and I know one that really is in your heart right now tonight after this race. Could you talk about them for a moment?
I'll tell you what, he's probably really mad he's not here, but I know he got a good view. I can't believe, you know, the way the world is when you lose somebody so special like Orville was. Just showed up, started helping us. I mean, not just on the race car, but anything you needed. He was just an amazing person, and I feel so bad for his family. I feel so sorry for him that he had a rough couple last years, and he just wanted to be out here racing with us. And I mean, I really lost a good friend, and it's just, you can't replace him.
Definitely a good friend, and a good friend of the Indianapolis Speedrome. Congratulations. Please give it up for Mark Tunny one more time, the first ever United States figure eight champion.